All right, part C of lecture 11. So in the last one, we learned how do you figure out the weight of an atom, right? So we now know the weight of atoms. Weights of atoms, hey, that's the number on the periodic table. So the number you see underneath the symbol, whatever it says there, that's the weight of an atom. Now, what we're going to look at in the last part of lecture 11 is, well, how much does a compound weigh? Now, when we talk about the weight of a compound, usually what we call it is the formula mass. So the formula mass is the weight of one molecule of a substance. So compounds are usually made up of molecules. So what does one molecule weigh? So how are we going to figure that out? Now, the way we're going to figure that out is, well, we're just going to add the weights of the atoms together. So let's do a little example, or a couple examples here. So over here on the left, you see some diagrams. Now this top one is that's actually the white guys are hydrogen, the red guy is oxygen. So this is water. If I want, and that little diagram, this is one water, what do we call it? One water molecule. So if I want to know the weight of one water molecule, we just add up the weights of those atoms. So water is two hydrogens, that's the white guys, and one oxygen, that's the red guy. So we're going to add up two hydrogens and one oxygen to get the total weight. What does one molecule of water weigh? So that's called finding the formula weight. The formula, or formula mass. The formula mass is the weight of one molecule. So it's going to be two hydrogens and one oxygen. That doesn't say 10 there. It's not supposed to. It kind of looks like 10, doesn't it? One oxygen. All right. So hydrogen weighs, if you look at your periodic table right here, hydrogen weighs a little over 1. Oxygen weighs, well, exactly 16 actually. So if you put it all together, two hydrogens are going to weigh 2.016. So I just doubled the hydrogen number. And then I'm going to add the weight of oxygen, which is 16. So the combined weight of all those atoms together, if you add it up, it adds up to 18.016. 18.016. So that's the weight of a molecule of water. It's just two hydrogens and oxygen. You put them together, you add them up. Now, wait a minute. Every number in chemistry has units. What unit do we weigh atoms in? Oh yeah, should be AMU. So that would be the unit here. It's this AMU still. All right, let's do another example. Carbon dioxide. If I want to weigh up a carbon dioxide, this is a representation of what carbon dioxide looks like. So the red guys again are my oxygens. There's two of them. And the black guy, that's my carbon. So these are kind of the colors that chemists like to use. They're kind of standardized. So if I want to know the weight, what does one molecule of carbon dioxide weigh? You just add them up. So let me erase some of this. Oh, darn it. You would add up, what, one carbon. Let me make sure I got the right color. There we go. One carbon and two oxygens. You just put them together. So it's going to be once times carbon. It's 12.01. That's what the periodic table tells me. And then there are how many oxygens? There is two oxygens. So you would do double twice times 16. Oh yeah, that's the number it says underneath oxygen on the periodic table. So if you put it all together, twice carbon and, I'm sorry, one carbon, I misspoke there, and twice oxygen, the grand total, so zeros, it's going to add up to a little over 44, 44.01. And again, the units should be AMU. All right, 44.01 AMU. All right, so let's do one more. So this is a molecule of water, or a molecule of carbon dioxide and a molecule of water. That's their weight. All right, let's do one more that's a little more challenging, huh? All right, let's say I wanted to know the weight of, let's do this guy. This guy right here is actually calcium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide. So if I wanted to know the weight of calcium hydroxide, what I would do is I would add up a calcium and 2 hydroxides. Now, this is actually, if you look above it and you're like, what the heck is that? That is a representation of calcium hydroxide. You notice that it's a big old grid. Why does it look like a big old grid? Because calcium hydroxide, there's an H2. There is metals and non-metals, so that is an ionic compound. So this is an ionic compound. So that's why when I kind of found a picture of it, that's why it looks like a grid, and it's an ionic compound. Now, we are going to add it up the same way though, right? We're going to add up the number of atoms off the periodic table. So we're going to add up, I suppose, 1 calcium, the weight of 1 calcium. And then we're going to add up how many oxygens are in that formula. Oh, you have to multiply. See the parentheses? So there's actually 2 oxygens. It's sort of like 2 times 1 there. And then there's also, you know, the parentheses matter. There's also actually 2 hydrogens. So we're going to put them all together to get our grand total. So you would do, let's see here. Oh, I should have maybe erased a little bit of this so you could see it. There we go. So you would add up 1 calcium, 40.08, twice oxygen, 16, and then once times hydrogen, or sorry, twice hydrogen. Oh, I keep saying the wrong thing. Sorry about that. So it'd be 40 from the calcium, 40.08. And if you double the oxygen, you double 16, you get 32. And then you double the hydrogen, you get a little over 2. So the grand total, when you put them all together, it adds up to, is that right? Yeah, 70, no, that doesn't look right. Let me check my work. Is that right? Well, I rounded a little bit. 74.10. All right. So when I'm adding, you might remember I go by decimal places. So if you go by decimal places, the least amount of decimal places in those numbers are 2. So that's why I only put 2 in my answer there. So that's rounded. All right, so it's 74.10. Oh, what unit? AMU. We weigh atoms and molecules in AMU. All right, so this one's slightly trickier because you have to know what to do with that parenthesis, right? So everything in the parenthesis, there's twice as much of it. So there's actually 2 hydrogens and 2 oxygens. Now, the only other thing I want to tell you that might confuse you. Remember when we did water a minute ago? And I told you it's made up of molecules because it's molecular. And then we did carbon dioxide a minute ago. And I told you it's made up of molecules because it's molecular. So when we add up an ionic compound, when we're adding up the weight of an ionic compound, it's not really the weight of a molecule. They're not made up of molecules. So when we add up this weight, this is the weight of what's called a formula unit. It's the same idea. It's the weight of that combinations of atoms, but we don't typically call them molecules. We call them formula units. So the red guys are actually the oxygens, and there's actually a little white speck in there. It's kind of hard to see. We added up this basically. This is your calcium, and we added up 2 hydroxides. So that group of atoms that the formula is telling me, that's called a formula unit. Why? Because it's ionic. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Maybe we should practice one. So let me flip over and we'll practice one and then see if you can add up some weights. All right. Okay, so here's one for you to try. What's the formula mass of calcium phosphate? So you see I gave you the formula there. So this is the formula for calcium phosphate. So you need to find the formula mass. Add up the masses. All right, a little pop-up will show up in a minute. You're going to need a periodic table. So you can either pause this and stare at this periodic table or grab another one. So here comes the pop-up. Okay, Hopefully you got that right. Let me just remind you if you made a mistake. Oh, how many atoms should we be adding up? I hope you added up 3 calciums. And then for phosphorus, how many phosphoruses did you add up? I hope you added up 2 times 1, 2 phosphoruses. And then how many oxygens did you add up? It should be 2 times 4, 8 oxygens. So if you did that and you didn't get the right answer, you probably made a math mistake. The other option is maybe you, added up or didn't take into account the parentheses and you used the wrong amounts or something. All right. So in any case, hopefully this made sense. We'll practice this in our Zoom time a little bit. And with that, we're done with lecture 11. If you have any issues or questions, of course, you can contact me and I'd be glad to help you out as much as I can. All right. So hang in there.